We are 6 days away from Michigan taking on Alabama in the Rose Bowl, an iconic stadium event, you name it, taking on a big-time program, and we've got to dive into this game. So, Brant, I want to start with just Alabama's offense and how they match up with Michigan's defense. What worries you? What makes you feel good about Alabama's offense, how Michigan's defense stacks up with them? We'll start on that side of the football.
Dave, looking at the matchups, Jalen Milroe will do one of two things. He will throw it over your head, or he will run it on you. He does not want to play in between the hashes. He doesn't want to play over the middle. He doesn't want to throw intermediate passes. And the reason for that is he's not polished yet. He's not a dude that's going to throw into tight windows. If he does throw into tight windows, he's liable to get picked off. And I've seen it all year. One of the things about Milroe is when I said that he'll throw it over the top, he'll complete it over the top. He actually has a pretty good completion percentage on the deep ball. So that's something that Michigan needs to be aware of. But this is a Michigan team that is kind of built to stop that. You watched against Ohio State. How many deep balls did you see completed? 2, maybe 3. I remember one to Cade Stover up the seam for 30 or 40 yards. And who can forget the Marvin Harrison one-handed pass interference? Like, he's just an athletic freak. Top 3 pick. I get it. But Michigan does not get beat on the deep ball very often. Corners are very good. Their nickel's very good. Their safeties are seasoned, and they're very good. I think where the disadvantage for Michigan is coming into this game is at linebacker, oddly enough. Junior Colson now has 2 broken hands. Have you heard that? Like, he's going to have 2 casts on maybe? That worries me. I don't need a guy chasing down Jalen Milroe that doesn't have the function of all his fingers. That scares me. I don't need you trying to wrap up a guy that can run a 4.440 with 2 casts. That is concerning to me. And while Junior Colson probably is our best linebacker, we are pretty deep at linebacker. So I think, Dave, that we need to be running in fresh bodies for this spy situation because you're going to have to spy. Give up some of that middle coverage to make sure you're hanging out and making sure you're keeping Jalen Milroe boxed in, basically. So Ernest Hausman is probably going to have to play a little bit in this game. I'm going to guess they're going to have to go 3 linebackers at least, like on a typical rotation. Defensive ends, you have got to keep them in the pocket. They're going to do some design run stuff, and our defensive tackles are going to have to play really well to keep him from getting extra yards. But I think the designed run stuff, those are kind of wins for Michigan. I think it's when the scramble situations happen that it could be a net loss for Michigan. So making sure that you do whatever you can to keep him in the pocket defensively for Michigan is going to be the name of the game. Because I don't think this Alabama offensive line can hold up with Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham all game. Rashawn Benny, I know they're going to be platooning for sure. And the defensive ends are going to be doing the same thing. Jenkins is going to be in the middle too. So it's just going to be Michigan's defensive rotations are going to be key at linebacker and at defensive end and defensive line, Dave. I think that that's where this game comes into, and making sure that guys are fresh to be able to make plays on Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, I think Alabama doesn't have, they don't have Calvin Ridley. They don't have Devontae Smith, Jamison Williams. Like they don't have these guys that they've historically had, but they do have Jermaine Burton, who can definitely burn you downfield. And they do have Isaiah Bond, who's a very good undersized receiver, who's a very good like slot type of receiver. I think it's going to be a challenge, but it's also not Marvin Harrison Jr. or Emeka Ibuka or Julian Fleming. And so, Cade Stover, like they've proven that they can defend that. Okay. They got to keep things in front of them though. Very similar to Ohio State. Keeping Jalen Milroe in the pocket is a dream scenario. It's going to be difficult to do. They're going to draw up things. Michigan has not seen a quarterback like Jalen Milroe this year. They have not. They have historically struggled with mobile quarterbacks, and we'll see for the first time what that looks like on January 1st. I think Jalen Milroe is the next Lamar Jackson? No, I don't. But I think he's very good. I think he keeps plays alive with his feet. See the Auburn game, right? The Hail Mary chuck down the field. Michigan needs to play their best defensive game. And this is not an Alabama team that's going to hang 40 points on you. That's not what they're built to do. In fact, they're built defensively, which almost concerns me a little bit more. I do know that they're starting running back. I forget the kid's name. He's been out. They're supposed
Chase
to get
McClellan.
him. Chase McClellan, thank you. They're supposed to get him back. But look, I think that Alabama has, and I don't know this kid's name, but they've started a true freshman at left tackle all year, and just doing my homework with them. And he struggled early on this year. He's like a mammoth, like 6'7", 350 pounds or something crazy.
Caden Proctor is his name.
Caden Proctor, thank you. And he's gotten a heck of a lot better. I mean, this kid will probably be a first-round draft pick, right, when all is said and done. But he's a true freshman. And I think most Alabama fans would tell you you're going to get some sacks against Alabama. Jalen Milroe has a tendency to hold on to the football just a little bit too long, tries to make plays that aren't always there. And Michigan needs to absolutely feast when those moments happen. And do I think that they're up to the challenge? I do. I do. My one pause for concern is that this defense, we just literally won't know. Like, we think we know, Brant. Like, we think we can name the dudes on our team that are like, yep, they will show up. Jalen Harrell's going to make a play, like all of that. But what we have not seen is a quarterback like Jalen Milroe. We just haven't. And I know that you've given me a little bit of a hard time. Be like, dude, you're so high on Jalen Milroe. I'm just saying he is just that type of quarterback that can absolutely burn you. He can also be turnover prone, like you mentioned. And so there's a possibility he's going to throw a couple of interceptions. And normally when that happens against Michigan football, you can win the game. Okay, as long as you are playing mistake-free football and playing your brand of football, you know it's quite possible you win this game, but it's not going to be any easy task. Brant, I want to flip to the other side of the football. Alabama's defense against Michigan's offense. What sticks out to you? What do you like? What don't you like?
Dave, I want to just finish real quick on that point that you had said about Jalen Milroe maybe being a different kind of quarterback. If you're a Michigan fan, he is similar. He's bigger than Talia Tagovailoa, but he is similar. Talia is actually a better passer of the football than Jalen Milroe is, but they both kind of have that escapability, that maneuverability, if you will. And Talia gave Michigan some problems. He likes to throw the deep ball, but what was the thing that we knew about him? He will also turn it over. And that is the same thing Dave was trying to convey to everybody is, if he gives you a chance to take the ball, you have to take the ball. There can't be any, oh, man, I just slipped through my hands type situations. Not against Alabama. Anyway, I like on offense, I like our tight ends. I think there has to be two tight end sets in this game. I think that you're really going to have to use Barner and Loveland over the middle. You're going to have to match them up against linebackers, and you're going to have to try to have them on drags, and you're going to have to try to get those guys the ball in space, because I don't think you're going to get much from the outside. Michigan doesn't typically get stuff from the outside anyway. That's not something that Michigan's ever hung their hat on, was go routes and sluggos and stuff like that. That's not something that Michigan wants to operate. And if Kool-Aid McKinstry is on an island out there against Cornelius Johnson or Roman Wilson or whatever, more power to them. I don't care about that. I think that they have the advantage in the secondary against our receivers, certainly. So Michigan needs to operate between the tackles, running the ball, and they also have to operate with the tight ends. And I think that plays well for JJ getting into a rhythm and then looking for his shots on the outside if there are any to be had. The one thing that we've noticed as Michigan fans, Dave, I know you and I have talked about this, JJ in rhythm, JJ comfortable is a different type of JJ. And when he's forcing things, he looks odd and out of place. And how many close calls have we seen this year, Dave, with the pass to Roman Wilson against Nebraska, right? Kind of a gross ball that he catches on the back of a guy's head. The throw against Ohio State, kind of a close call to be sure. It's stuff like that where I don't think JJ has to do stuff like that. I think he does stuff like that because he knows he can. In this type of game, you don't need to do stuff like that. I think you look for the possession receivers. I think you look for the stuff that's there. Alabama's going to give you 5-yard routes, 10-yard routes, whatever it is. They're going to give up some stuff, and you're going to have to be patient enough to do it. And Michigan is also going to have to work in the run game with JJ. And I know that you'll probably hit on that too, Dave, is using JJ's legs is going to be absolutely critical in this game. And if that isn't the most obvious thing we've ever said on the podcast, then I don't know what is. But it goes back to, was he not healthy against Ohio State? Because they didn't really do it against Ohio State. You know, they did it a couple times against Penn State, but he got injured. Haven't really seen it too much this year, Dave. Do you think that they're holding on to that? What do you like on offense here?
I'll save the answer to that question for the third segment here because I want to get into that a little bit in terms of just Michigan football as a whole. I think that JJ is going to need to be the most mobile he's ever been to just be to unlock an element of this offense that we know it's there, but we just haven't seen it utilized. And part of that is the injury to JJ against Penn State and how the last part of the season is shaken out. But yeah, you're going to need JJ at his best to be mobile, to be throwing on the run, to lock in with those tight ends. You named it, Brant, Colson Loveland with AJ Barner. I also think they've got to get Donovan Edwards involved. Look, I don't know how successful you're going to be running the football with Blake Corum. I mean, I'm not saying that Alabama's defense or like up front is outstanding, but look, you've got Dallas Turner there. You've got Chris Braswell that are, I mean, you're talking about first round draft picks, right? And so I don't know how much of the run game is going to be open. I think you can run the football on Alabama. I do. I think you've got to get creative with how you're going to use a weapon like Donovan Edwards, who we know can be a weapon, but we haven't necessarily seen that this year. And so where Alabama has struggled this year, in my opinion, has been when guys are put in motion. And so line Donovan up back there with Blake, toss him in motion, get him a mismatch on a linebacker, get him a mismatch on a safety. And I forget their safety's name, another true freshman kid, but he's unbelievable. He's returning punts for him now. He's like next up there, but still those mismatches I think will be absolutely critical. And look, that's on Sharon Moore to dial this up. This is what we've been asking for these last few weeks. Where Michigan has historically not been good is when they take a break in football and then they come and they need to show up in January or on New Year's Eve. And it just hasn't boded well. So what are you doing differently? Well, that's on this coaching staff. That's on Sharon Moore. That's on Jesse Minter to be as prepared as he possibly can be for a quarterback like Jalen Milroe. And yes, if things are all clicking, I think Michigan has a very good chance, but it's not going to be easy at all. Like people will say, this is not an elite Bama team. Look, outside of one misstep against Texas, they've been pretty dang good. And they took down the giant in Georgia. And yes, we know that they struggled against Auburn. We know they struggled against South Florida. We know this stuff, but you know what? They've won all of those games. And that's how it works in this business. And so I look at Kool-Aid McKinstry, I look at Terry and Arnold opposite side him. I'm looking at just the secondary and saying, and like I said, I'm forgetting the true freshman safety's name, but this is going to be the best secondary that Michigan has faced. Insert Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell. It is not going to be easy, but I think what unlocks the potential of this offense is going to be J.J. McCarthy. He's experienced, he is seasoned, and I think that the biggest X factor in all of this, Brant, and then we can transition to the next segment, is the Michigan offensive line. I think that they have to hold their own because Brant, if they, you cannot get into what happened against Penn State. You can run the football and put every guy on the line and bully Penn State to a win. You can't do that against the SEC. You can't do that against Alabama. It's not going to work. Okay. This offensive line, like, they can't collapse early on against Braswell and Turner and be like, look, now this is Chop Robinson and whatever against Penn State, where they were just like, we're not going to do this. We're just going to bully our way in. Well, Brant, that works in the Big Ten. It does not work in these games. And so Michigan's going to have to be on their A+ game to win this one. I think it will be close,